in the end.
With Burnout 2 having sold about 2 million copies, it's no surprise, say it with me now, a sequel was inevitable. Though, there were some troubles that led up to it. For starters, due to Acclaim's bad financial situation, they didn't have the resources to properly market them in the USA, where they were based. I guess that explains all the desperate marketing they tried to do around this time. Reimbursing speeding tickets in the UK for the previous game, awarding money to any UK parents desperate enough to name their baby Turok for Turok Evolution, attempting to advertise Shadow Man's Second Coming on actual tombstones, I shit you not, and BMX Triple X, just all of it. Combine that with multiple lawsuits from former partners/investors and the Olsen twins, amongst all people, for unpaid royalties, and a sea of mediocre to downright awful games, it's no surprise Acclaim went out of business in 2004. Where would this put Burnout 3, you ask? In the hands of Electronic Arts. But at first, things weren't so friendly between EA and Criterion. You see, even though EA didn't pick up Burnout when Criterion first shopped it around, EA knew they wanted to work with them sooner or later. While Burnout 2 was being worked on by 65 people, the other 65 were working on a spiritual successor to their own Dreamcast game, Takedown. That game was Airblade, a Tony Hawk Pro Skater style game with a hoverboard and an actual story to boot. Sony wanted to work with Criterion on a sequel, but the team decided to follow the Jim Carrey route and turned down doing a sequel to Airblade. Instead, EA finally had something for Criterion to do, likely inspired by Takedown and Airblade, a remake of Skate or Die. EA probably wanted their own Tony Hawk Pro Skater series, and who better to collaborate with than the people who made the engine that powered two of the most important games in the franchise, 3 and 4. Meanwhile, once Burnout 2 was released, Criterion had their own pitch for EA Canada. The team behind Burnout 2 wanted to make a stunt racing Need for Speed theme game. Need for Speed split second. However, it was not to be for the people involved in it at all. EA decided to, well, pull an EA, and kept interfering so much during the Skate or Die remake development that it no longer followed Criterion's vision. EA kept requesting game design changes. Why?
Take a wild guess.
They wanted that open world element of the GTA 3D trilogy, which also ran on renderware. And no one on the team quite knew how to approach that. The team was confused, stressed, and some even got very sick because of the development troubles. Essentially, designer Craig Sullivan wanted a street skating game based off his own experiences. EA just wanted what would eventually become Tony Hawk's American Wasteland. Neither company saw eye to eye, and Criterion put the project out of its misery. Seemingly, the remnants would eventually become, well, Skate. EA, though, at the time was none too happy about this, and ended the relationship between the two, leading to the proposed Need for Speed game not even making it out of pre-development. EA even went so far as to threaten to sue Criterion and put them out of business. That obviously never happened. Criterion's director of design, Alex Ward, ended up even deleting his entire EA folder on his desktop. Lessons were learned, to say the least. Fast forward to E3 2003. Bruce McMillan, EVP at EA Worldwide Studios, wanted to fix the relationship between the two companies. He even offered to let them do a game they wanted for them. Ward initially refused because of what happened before, but EA persisted. Criterion was also waiting for the 7th generation of consoles before wanting to make a new entry. One of the EA guys even told them, "You guys got lucky with Burnout. If you were doing that again, you'd be screwed." So Criterion, deciding they no longer wanted to wait till the 7th gen came out, decided to put their money where their mouth was and make Burnout 3 with EA under the condition that EA would not interfere with the development. Criterion would have full development control. Development began in June of 2003 with an even bigger team than Burnout 2. By January of 2004, a playable build was finally ready to be shown to EA, and they were impressed. As more development progressed, EA and Criterion announced the game in March of 2004 with its full subtitle, Burnout 3 Takedown, which was determined via EA's focus testing even though the team wasn't fond of it. Other potential subtitles included fuel injection, crash and burn, seek and destroy, and even the absolute insanity that is see you in hell. The hype was building as the game was showcased via trade shows like E3 2004 and the like. Hell, even one of the heads of Xbox at the time, Jay Allard, said, "Holy shit, that looks good." And thankfully development went much smoother and both companies benefited. Criterion from EA's experience and EA for letting them do their thing. The hype and expectations were so huge for the game that on July 28, 2004, not long by the time development was almost done, sans bug testing and polishing, EA announced that they had reached an agreement with Canon Europe, who owned Criterion, to acquire all of the Criterion Software group. This included Criterion Games, Renderware, and the Burnout franchise. The deal was finalized on October 19, 2004, a little more than a month after Burnout 3 came out. This move paid off. The high expectations were made, and EA now owned not only the most versatile engine of its day, but they also owned the Burnout franchise, starting from the masterpiece we will be talking about today, Burnout 3 Takedown. This game was released for the PS2 and Xbox on September 8, 2004 for North America, and September 10, 2004 for Europe. Despite being damn near 20 years old, Burnout 3 is still one of the best racing games I've ever played. It may even be one of my favorite games of all time. And a little quick hot take for you, from me to you, it still runs circles around every single 3D Mario Kart game, sans the first, since they both have a Metacritic score of 94. Okay, first one's not exactly 3D, but still, if we were to throw everything in there, it still ties it and matches it well. And the PS2 version has a 93 on Metacritic, but still. Hey, the numbers don't lie, but let's not rely on those. Why don't I tell you how amazing it is while showing you at the same time? Burnout 3 has a few basic modes. Single event, to race on any unlocked track with any variant of an event possible, local, and online multiplayer. The latter of which was a big deal, but the main mode is the Burnout 3 World Tour mode. This is the career mode, and it has been entirely reworked from 2. Races now take place all over the earth, and you can complete them in any order you want. Well, at least at first, pick events and choose, and eventually you'll unlock more as you keep going through. In total, there are 173 events. The events are split into 3 areas: USA, Europe, and Far East. Each have 55, 70, and 48 events respectively. At first, only the USA will be open, but as you complete more events, more will open up. When you select an area, you're taken to the map, and then you can then select where you want to go, and you will be given events to complete. You have race and crash events. More on the actual racing in a moment. The race modes include normal 3-lap closed circuit races, Road Rage, where you try to get as many takedowns as you can, more on takedowns in a moment, Grand Prix, which works the same as in the previous games, Face Off, race one-on-one to win a car via point A to point B sprint or 1-lap circuit, Eliminator, where the racer who makes last place on each lap gets eliminated, similar to the circuit last lap knockout in Need for Speed Underground, Preview Lap, which is time attack with a car you may unlock in the future, get gold on a preview lap for a postcard, and then get all 10 to get the hot rod. Lastly, the almighty crash mode returns with new improvements much like the actual racing. The in-game racing builds off what was established in Burnout 2. You earn boost via the established ways seen in the previous games: drifting, near misses, wrong side of the road driving, etc. What's new is that you can now also earn boost by tailgating your opponents, and you can do 2 boost earning moves at the same time, such as near missing a car while driving on the wrong side of the road. Time limits are now gone for good, which is a major plus. You can also steal boosts from your rivals now by rubbing against them, slamming into them, hitting them from behind, and pushing them into walls. Of course, you won't get very far with the small boost meter you have, but you can expand that by taking down your rivals, which leads us into the big new addition this game has: Takedowns. Yeah, you may have noticed the racing has become more aggressive, and takedowns are the ultimate form of it. Alex Ward describes this as fighting through traffic. Wipe out your rivals any way how. Slamming them into walls, slam them into oncoming traffic, over rail guards, the possibilities are endless. When you do, you get an extra section added to your boost meter. You can have up to 4. However, be careful not to get taken out or crash yourself. In the event you do, the game will enter the crash sequence, but you can use the other new feature to slow it down, Aftertouch. When you crash or get taken out, hit the Aftertouch button to slow the wreck down Matrix style. You can then pivot the car much easier. Slam your wrecked car into another racer and your boost meter is saved. Fail to do so and you lose one of the parts of your boost meter. Getting it back though isn't so much trouble. Aftertouch also works in Crash Mode. Speaking of which, Crash Mode returns from the last game, and while it follows the same idea, it's been reworked a little differently as well. Instead of just firing your car off at one spot and hoping for the best, you'll launch your car into the air and you can control it via impact time once it's launched. At least if you find a specific ramp, otherwise you're just going to have to wreck it the old-fashioned way. Wreck enough cars and you'll trigger the Crash Breaker. This will blow up your car again and allow you to move it around a bit more to wreck some cars you may have missed, or wreck other stationary vehicles like a lot of buses. On top of the Crash Breaker and Aftertouch, Crash Mode now has power-ups. Lightning will boost your cars, you can get $signs for extra cash, multipliers to multiply your total, and extra Crash Breakers for more maximum carnage. Be careful not to hit the Heartbreaker or your total will be halved. So now there's more strategy to it than Burnout 2. Not just about finding the right spot at the moment, but also navigating to find the right power-ups that will help push you to get that coveted gold medal, of which you will need all of for the Custom Coupe Ultimate, and a lot of money on damage amount for special cars in Crash Mode. Crash Mode just got a hell of a lot more fun, especially with multiplayer variants like a team crash where one team tries to get the most points possible and both players must get the multiplier for it to count, double impact where two face off to see how who can get the crash high score and you can hit arrows to switch score, and party crash just to see who causes the biggest crash in one area. For that matter, the game still remains fun, maybe even more so thanks to its controls. The controls have been tightened even further and you really feel more in control. Even with the more faster cars, you never really feel out of control, though the occasional spin around may still happen. You'll still be fine for the most part. Though we're back to one binding scheme from the Xbox version and even the PS2 version, which sucks, you know, for those who don't want to use the triggers on the Xbox version. A little regression, but the controls are still fine and work as they should on both versions. It's also very easy to pull off takedowns, which you would hope so since it's pretty much the core of the game. They were inspired by knockdowns and the aggressive style of racing from SSX, and I think Criterion did a good job of importing that into here, but with cars. If you get enough takedowns as you play, you'll get rewards. More on that later. Not only does it feel more aggressive, it feels faster. The game's sense of speed makes the old games feel like child's play, and on top of that, it all looks really damn impressive. Which leads us into the graphics. Up until the later games, this was pretty much the best looking Burnout game at this point. While I do think Revenge in Paradise looked better, there's no denying how impressive Burnout 3 looks. Even to this day, Criterion improved the graphics component of renderware to give it a 50 to 100% faster rendering time. This allowed for performance for advanced graphical effects such as real-time radio city lighting and better vehicle environment mapping effects. Cars now look even better thanks to this. They're shinier than ever, and it really feels like you're oogling them in the game like you would at a real dealership. On top of that, the game's environments look much better than 2. With sharper textures on buildings, forestry, roadways, and more, Burnout 3 really is one of the best looking 6th gen games ever made. Once again, there is variety in the levels you drive in. Forest areas, downtowns, coastal towns, industrial areas, etc. There's even more variety thanks to the European and Far Eastern tracks. Tighter areas on Far East with all sorts of unique buildings and Chinatowns and the like. Europe also has some of the most gorgeous looking tracks in the whole franchise. All with a good amount of traffic variety across all 3, even if the traffic is less detailed than the player cars, but oh well. The car crashes also look even more detailed and spectacular thanks to the aforementioned engine improvements. More mangled up bumpers, cracked windshields, doors that won't close, and if you beat the car up enough or crash enough, it will really look like it's been through hell. One last thing, the lighting looks amazing. It makes the time of day you're racing look even better. The sun feels brighter like on a hot summer's day, cloudiness makes you feel like it could rain at any moment, and the sunset really makes you feel like It's the last race before you settle in for the day. I just wish there was some nighttime racing, but oh well, the next game would give us that. Everything looks amazing, and it runs at a rock-solid 60 frames per second without ever dropping. Crashes run at 30 frames per second, but that's more excusable since they can be slowed down, and more details like debris and particles shine through there. The sound design is also damn near perfect. Sound effects are top-notch. The crash nav sound effects make you feel like you're navigating some supercomputer/terminal to find your next event. On top of that, in the game, the racing sounds there are awesome as well. The car sounds sound intense. The later ones especially really sound fast. They almost sound like fighter planes taking off like in the opening of Top Gun. Car crashes sound the most impactful in the series up to this point. Crunching sounds really crunch, drifting sounds intense, boost sounds like it makes you feel faster, near misses sound closer and faster as you just boom, fly right by traffic with faster cars, and these little details just keep adding up to make the racing sound more intense. With this newfound ruthless aggression, it's no surprise the game's soundtrack matches this aggression. Thanks to being published by EA, Criterion took advantage of the EA Tracks feature and used licensed music for the first time in the franchise. The game's soundtrack has a mix of rock, pop punk, hardcore punk, post-hardcore, and a little bit of metal, funk rock, and rap rock. With songs by No Motif, Autopilot Off, Yellow Card, Pennywise, Fall Out Boy, My Chemical Romance, and more, it's a good mix of bands that some were semi-unknown, some were up-and-coming, and some were pretty well-known, either at the time and still are, or back then. The songs themselves actually fit well, despite what some would have you believe, and you can choose which ones you hear in the menus / in your races. You can even turn some off entirely. If you have the Xbox version, you can use custom soundtracks, which is always a plus. Continuing on the sound, there's now an announcer in the mix. In this case, real-life radio personality DJ Stryker. The music is presented via the in-game radio Crash FM. While his commentary just adds a bit of life and even mentions SSX and that series characters in some parts, the dialogue can get repetitive after a while, but you can turn them off if you want to. There's actually quite a bit of replayability here. If you miss any gold medals, you can go back and get more of them, as getting them all will unlock the World Circuit Racer for the race mode. Do the same with Crash mode golds to get the car there. There are also takedown trophies. When you complete a certain number of takedown goals per trophy, you'll get that trophy. Complete all the goals and you'll get the Euro Circuit Racer. You can also complete signature takedowns by getting takedowns in specific spots. Some of these are difficult and you won't get them on your first go. Takedown milestones also unlock some cars. Getting all crash headlines unlock bonus crash mode cars. And basically, you will be here a while as you want to unlock everything and you will have fun doing it. I know I did, well, mostly. Except for those last few signature takedowns. Those were kind of rough, especially the tuk-tuk one. But let's just wrap this up. If this review sounds like one giant love letter to Burnout 3 Takedown, that's because it is. Everything about this game is on point. It looks amazing, especially if you run it in progressive scan. It plays smoothly, sounds intense, has plenty of content to keep you coming back between regular racing and Crash Run, and above all else, the game is fun. However, not being able to rebind the controls kind of sucks. Stryker's commentary can get hold, and the game's online mode sadly no longer works. Hopefully the Insignia team can get it up and running one day, even if it will take a while because EA always had to go and do things the hard way. Who knows, if the online goes back on Xbox, it might go back on PS2 as well. Despite this, there is still plenty of single-player content to keep you coming back on top of local multiplayer. The flaws I did mention, though, were very minor and will not impact the game's score in any way. It's affordable across both platforms, and plain and simply, flat out, Burnout 3 is simply a must-play game. This isn't just one of the best, if not the best arcade racing game of all time. It might even just be one of the best games of all time. And one last other quick thing, you can play it on the Xbox 360, so if you've got a 360 lying around, you can play the original Xbox version there. It's earned its reputation, and I will always look back fondly on it. I give Burnout 3 Takedown a perfect 5 out of 5 with a badass seal of approval. I can't say this enough. This game is fun. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, click the big red button below to subscribe. Check out the other links in the description for more cool stuff. And check out the playlist on screen for more content. See you in the next video.